Good morning. Hi. Are you awake already? Have you already have your coffee in your favorite mug and you're ready to listen to my session? If so, then I really welcome you to this session around the adaptive cards and how you can use them to boost user experience in your business processes using this technology. Welcome and good morning, Omaha viewers, and let's begin. First of all, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Tomasz Poszytek. I'm coming from Warsaw in Poland, and I'm Business Applications MVP. Apart from that, I'm also an expert in Microsoft technology, so I'm working with SharePoint for over 10 years. I'm generally a Microsoft advocate and evangelist. I'm also having a big experience in business processes, in digitalization, in transforming the paper-based or Excel-based processes into Power Platform or any other third-party platform that works with Microsoft, because I do work with them as well, like vNext, for example. And I'm very addicted to the community. I'm doing a lot around the community events, around blogging and recording videos. So if you're interested in what I'm actually doing, in what I'm writing about, simply follow me on the Twitter, follow me on my blog. There is also going to be the ending slide where I will share even more social media around myself. Okay, so let's go on. First, I wanted to thank the sponsors. Thank you very much. Even though that this event is online, it still requires some cost to be spent by the organizers. So thank you very much for not giving up and for not turning back from us, and still for supporting the community. Thank you. All right. The agenda for today is quite short. First, I'll talk about the story. So what is the story behind adaptive cards, why we are having this technology, and how this all happened, how this all started. Then briefly, I'll just go over the message cards, because just wanted to give you this overview so you're aware that there was this technology sometime in the past. And so that you have this full picture of the technology. Then the adaptive cards and the demos. I have, I think, 3 demos, so I'll show them all to you. And lastly, we'll go to the future. We'll see what is upcoming, what is the team working on, and what can we expect from the newest releases. Okay, ready? Okay, let's go. So when today you look at the social media pages, at the content, you can clearly identify those areas that are somehow closed, that are somehow surrounded with the borders, that can be named as a packed part of content. What I mean is that you can just tell that this part of the page is just coming from the external source, or that you can name is just a piece of the information that you can find as well on the different pages. And so, for example, looking at the Facebook here, when you see it, you can clearly say that this YouTube tile is kind of this card, this kind of this packed part of the user interface, that if you go to a different site, if you go to a different client, to a different application, you can still see it, you can still name and identify that this is the same content, this is the same movie, this is the same title, the same description, even though that the host is different. So when we're talking about the cards, actually, we can say that this definition, let's say, that the cards are actually being used to display the content, your content, in the host experience. Now, by that I mean that when you're designing a card, the only thing you really have to focus on is to design the content, is to design the layout of the content. So to put, for example, image on the left, text on the right, to put the table, to put some links, to put some buttons, to put some fields. But don't actually focus on colors, on paddings, margins, on font families or font sizes. So all those things that makes this content to look and feel as it is a part of the overall user experience of the host where it is being displayed, because this is what the host is taking care of. How it all happened? Well, in 2016, Microsoft realized that it has a couple of teams working actually on the very, very similar technology. So they had Windows team working on live tiles. They had Exchange team working on actionable messages. They had Bot Framework team working on some kind of a cards as well. And in the same time, their competitors like Slack and Messenger, they already had their own solutions for letting users to share content that would be adopted by the host. And so they thought, okay, if we have so many teams working on the same, let's just merge them and create a unified technology that can be shared by those teams, that can be used by those teams. And so in 2017, Matt Hittinger joined Microsoft, David Clow joined the team, and together they built up or set up the team that was focused on creating this unified technology. And just in the same year, they have released the first version of message cards, and very soon it became obsolete and was replaced just a year later by Adaptive Cards 1.0, because, well, it turned out that this message cards technology is just not flexible and scalable enough to be taken as this baseline, this fundament for the future development of a technology that can be used and expanded and extended. So, who is Matt and David? Matt Hittinger, before he joined Microsoft, he was working as a dev leader overseeing delivery of mobile apps for high-profile consumer brands. And this moment, this, let's say, experience that he was able to gain back then, gave him the knowledge to really to know how to create interfaces, what are the expectations of the users, what are the expectations of the programmers, how to create those applications to be consumed and adopted fast. So he's focusing on this part of the, let's say, look and feel. And also, since he joined, he's also a very active community member. He's speaking a lot at the user groups, meetups. He is also the organizer and the one who runs the Adaptive Cards community call every second Tuesday of the month. So if you're interested around what he's doing and what he's working on, simply follow him on his Twitter under Matt Hittinger. And David Clow is working for Microsoft for over 15 years already, so it's quite long. And before he joined the Adaptive Cards team, he was actually very much working on all the things around Exchange. So he's one of the authors, or even the owner of the EWS Managed API. He was working on OWA, so OVA. He was working on Office add-ins for Exchange, for Outlook. So the majority of his career at Microsoft is around the Exchange, Outlook, and those applications. But he's a programmer, so since he joined the team, he focused on, for example, created the Adaptive Cards Designer that I will showcase you later. And now he's working hard to unify the schema of actionable messages that we have in Outlook and Adaptive Cards so that we can have and use the same JSON schema for both places. Okay. But what makes those cards built by Microsoft so special? Why I'm actually spending an hour with you talking about those Adaptive Cards? What is so important about them? What is so unique? Well, first of all, they have this capability of being natively rendered on any platform that actually implements the SDK. And what is actually important, what I mentioned as well before, is that the content is being automatically adopted or adapted to the host user experience. So as said, you only have to focus on the content, and thanks to that, this technology gives us as designers much of free time, and we don't have to actually focus on how this card will be displayed on iOS, on Android, on web, in web page, in Teams, in Outlook. We only have to focus on the content, and thanks to that, this creation process is really low cost. And lastly, because we do design the cards using the JSON code or the JSON expressions, and the JSON, once being rendered, is, let's say, checked against the schema. Therefore, if there is anything put that is not in the schema, then it is not being rendered or just being displayed as a plain text. So it is also a very safe technology because thanks to this purely declarative code, we cannot inject any malicious code, for example. But what is more is that this technology is also dedicated for developers. It has extensible schema, so if it's open source, it's hosted on GitHub. If you want to create something that is, if you want to use in adaptive card something that is not in schema, you can simply grab this code and add your own definitions. Plus, the adaptive card is not only meant to be displayed for, it's not only meant to be used for displaying content, but it's also meant to be used by the users to provide the feedback, to interact with this content. So to click the hyperlinks, click the buttons, fill in the forms, and then send back to the host. So this also allows you to have this communication both ways with your users. And lastly, it also supports, or it is also properly consumed by all those applications for people with disabilities that are those text-to-speech applications. So you can also use this technology to create applications for these kind of purposes. Cool. So far, so good. Okay. Very briefly about the message cards. Message cards, as you remember, were born and released around 2017, and they were born as kind of a successor of actionable messages that were created back then by the Exchange team. Today, when you open the message cards docs, so documentation page, you'll see this big warning saying that this is obsolete, this is just outdated, it's not being developed anymore. So if you can just transition to adaptive cards, but still you can create content using message card. You can still use this technology, even though its schema, its scope of functionalities is very much limited. But one cool thing the message card has as a technology that adaptive card doesn't have is that you can post them over webhooks to Microsoft Teams and then sign to this webhook actually to communicate with this message card and what is displaying, and to replace it with a different message card and so on. So it just helps you to maybe make this communication on a Teams channel much efficient, or somehow more efficient, sorry. But you can't post via the webhook to the private communication. So here it has to be replaced by adaptive cards for sure. The message card, just to show you how it looked like, was a very, let's say, limited in its configuration, in its layout. So the schema of the message card was always built out of the section or sections, and then below the sections there was as well the section or the area for the actions. Now in each section you were only allowed to define one section's activity block, which was built from the title, subtitle, and image, one section's text block, and one section's facts. And if you wanted to make more facts, if you wanted to make more text blocks, then you had to multiply those sections. And then in the bottom you had those actions, where you were always able to put the buttons for submitting, for opening URLs, for toggling parts of the card, so to displaying, for example, additional fields to input data. And there was also one cool thing that was, well, used by the Exchange, by the actionable message, that was called action request. That was a successor of the old action called the transaction, that actually allowed you to create or to make transactions, payments, right from the card. There is nothing similar in actionable messages today or in the adaptive cards. But as said, that is over. So let's talk now about the adaptive cards. Adaptive cards were born in 2018 as a successor this time of the message cards. So this technology inherits actually all the good functionalities, apart from the webhooks, from the message cards. But because it is being developed constantly since 2018, this technology is way more developed, its schema is way more advanced, and you can do a lot of more things. Today, when we think about the adaptive cards, you can actually find this technology, the SDK of adaptive cards, in almost every communication tool that Microsoft built last years. So you can create adaptive cards in Outlook, you can create adaptive cards for Teams, for web chat, so for the bot framework. And I hope that by the end of this year, we will also have adaptive cards available for Power Virtual Agents, maybe in Power BI as well. You can use them for Cortana, you can use them in Windows Timeline. You can also find a web part that allows you to display adaptive cards inside SharePoint. So the number of possibilities to actually use this technology inside Microsoft 365 is really wide. Plus, you can as well use adaptive cards in your own applications. So if you think about being if you're a developer and if you're crafting your own applications, then you can easily grab the SDK and embed it in your application, whether it's built on Android or iOS or such modern program frameworks as Flutter or React Native. So wherever you want, you can simply get this SDK. It's free of charge, and you can really create awesome applications using this technology. When talking about the layout of adaptive card, this one represents more the version 1.0, which was a little bit more strict. But today we have the body, we have actions. However, we can put actions anywhere in the body, because from the version 1.1, we were having a container called an action set that we can put actually anywhere inside the content. So we can display buttons, we can display parts of the card anywhere we want. So this schema is really flexible. I mean, the layout is really flexible. And then what we can build the adaptive card from are those controls like the text block, the rich text block, the media control, the image control. We have the containers, so the fact set, the action set, the image set, the column set, which somehow simulates a table with the columns. And then when speaking about the inputs, we can use the text input, we can use toggle, we can use date, we can use choice sets, we can use radio buttons, drop downs. There is a lot of these things that we can actually use to build a card. But how do we actually build a card? Well, the first and the most proper address to do that is the adaptivecards.io/designer, where we can actually create our own card using what David Clow created, the drag and drop editor. But apart from the Adaptive Cards Designer, we can actually use the App Studio in Microsoft Teams that also allows us to visualize the adaptive card. There is as well the Adaptive Cards Visualizer for Visual Studio Code. So if you're crafting your cards in this tool, then you can as well have the live preview of how it looks like. There is also WPF Visualizer if you're working with adaptive cards for Microsoft applications, Windows-based applications. And there is also one cool thing that we can use that is called the Actionable Messages Debugger. So if you're doing this for Outlook and you want to check why your actionable message is not working or why the response from it is not reaching the server, then you can use this debugger to actually check what is going on and what is wrong. Let me just jump on to, to show you how the designer looks like. So, sorry. This is the designer. And, well, as you can see, it's just built out of the several blocks. So on the left, you have the picker with all the controls, inputs, and containers we can use. And the construction of the card is quite simple. So you just have to drag and drop those controls on the design canvas, and then just define their properties, configure how they look like. Then below we have the JSON with the structure. We have the data, sample data editor. I'll talk about that later because this is a part of the templating. And when we want to create a new card, what we have to do first to change the host where we want to use it. So for example, if we switch to Outlook actionable messages, this layout, this schema also somehow changes a little bit. We also can start from picking a draft or picking one of the existing examples. So if you don't want to start creating your card from the real blank canvas, you can choose one of the examples. And then just one cool thing is that also we can choose for what version of the Adaptive Cards SDK we want to create this adaptive card. Point is that not all the hosts are supporting the version 1.2 already. For example, Microsoft Teams is not supporting it in 100%, but Framework is doing 1.2 very well. But for example, Actionable Message is still working with version 1.0. Now, if we switch for a while from adaptivecards.io/designer into vNext adaptivecards.io/designer, then we land in a designer that is a kind of a sandbox where the team is just experimenting with the coolest features. And one of the fine things I just found here is called to create an adaptive card out of the picture. So if you have an image that shows kind of a content that you think can be transformed into an adaptive card, you can try to upload it. There is a machine learning that is trying to analyze the picture and then transform it into working JSON, but you can as well try to work from the examples. So once we hit to convert it to adaptive card, it will be transformed into, or it should be transformed into a working JSON, right? So it was transformed. It is purely the same. So we can actually start working this way as well. Cool. All right, let me just go back to the adaptivecards.io and stay here for a while. And that's it about the crafting. So now if you're ready, let's start with the demos. All right. Awesome. Okay. Let me go back to the applications. Fine. So this is an application that is built for the employees that I can use to request their holidays. The request is being then approved by the manager, and then it goes to HR. I am now logged in as a John researcher. This is my employee who is doing all those R&D projects with me. And now John is willing to place his new request. Well, in the application, he sees all the information about the quotas. And so let's start. Let's say it's going to be a special leave. How many days? 26. Wow. From Monday to, let's say, Tuesday, because he needs to prepare the session for the SPS Omaha. And now once this request is sent for approval, it is not going to be stored in SharePoint or elsewhere. It is going to be stored in Common Data Service. And there is a flow that actually is being triggered once a new request is placed in CDS, so once a new record is created. So let me show you how it works. Now, once I hit the send for approval, okay, this is now being saved here, so I have my own information as a request so that it has been placed. And now let me just jump back to my Microsoft Teams because I'm his manager. So this is my Microsoft Teams, and I have been sent adaptive card already by the bot flow, by the flow bot. I mean, by the Power Automate, but actually, where I have all the information that the John is requesting this special holiday request that he needs to prepare his session. So, well, okay. I can approve it from this place. Now, note one thing. Once I hit submit, this card is going to be replaced with a new card that I don't have actually a control over. So today when we are posting adaptive cards from Power Automate to Microsoft Teams, and we decide to have this confirmation card being displayed, then this is just being generated by the host, by the Flowbot, and it's a very default one, and we can't create our own. But I have my fingers crossed really that there is going to be this day that we will have as well the control over the confirmation card, how it looks like. Anyway, I confirm. And that's it. So now you can see this has been approved, and I can see this confirmation card. It's not that pretty as the one I have created in the first place, but it works. Now, me as a journal researcher, now if I go back to my application, I obviously see that it has been approved. I have all these details here. Plus, if me as a journal researcher, I go back to Microsoft Teams, I have information from my from my manager that this request has been approved, by whom, when. So I have all the information. I can as well go to my application to see this request. Plus, there is one more thing, because John is working in a team, and that would be really cool if a team is also aware that John is off for specific days, so that they can contact him to maybe take over his work for this period of time, or simply just be aware that their co-employee is just off. So in the Teams channel, we have also a card being sent so that any member can see it with the information that John Researcher is going for on holidays. And there is also an ICS file they can download and add to their calendar. So if they're really working closely with John, they will be also prompted with this event notification that John is going on holidays. Now, how it works? Let me show you the Power Automate that is all behind. Yeah, that's the one. So as said, the first thing that happens in this Power Automate is the trigger. It is being triggered once a new request is being placed. Then it is obtaining the information about the user who is requesting and their manager, and then it is preparing this approval task. So one important thing is that with this approach, because this is just going through a regular assign a task without awaiting, this task can be completed either from the adaptive card in my private communication, as you saw, or from action items in Power Automate, so under the approvals, or even in Outlook, there is an email sent with this actionable message where manager as well can just go and complete this task right from there. Now, if you're not aware of, one of the outputs that is being returned by the action to assign a task without waiting is a code of an adaptive card. So if we copy it, or if we send it to Microsoft Teams, we will have this kind of an adaptive card displayed. Now, what I'm doing in my flow is actually a small modification to this card, because I am preparing my own body part, and then I'm simply concatenating the header with my body with the actions from the original adaptive card. So what is being created in the end is the adaptive card that you just saw in Microsoft Teams. So this one a little bit slightly changed. So this is what I'm doing here in this Power Automate action. And then once this is created, this is now sent to the managers or to all the employees identified as managers, and then Flow is waiting for the approval to be made. Now, as said, this can be completed from an Outlook message, from the task in approvals, or from this adaptive card in Microsoft Teams. That's really flexible and up to the message, up to the manager how they want to complete this task. Now, once the task is completed, the result is being registered, and then if this is rejected or approved, a different confirmation card is being sent to the requester. So if this is a rejection, then they're being sent an adaptive card with a cross button, cross image. If that was approved, then you saw what happens. Now, what is happening next is this generation of the ICS file. So the flow now is creating a file, actually a contents of the ICS file, and is storing this ICS file inside a blob storage so that it's available for everyone to download without a need to authenticate and so on. And lastly, based on the type of the request, it is generating a different adaptive card that is being sent to Microsoft Teams channel that can be consumed and seen by every member of this channel. And that's it. How did you like it? I hope it was really cool. Now, the second demo I want to show you is the one related to, let's say, the governance of Microsoft Teams and the messages. There are two new triggers that are coming to Power Automate. The first one is called when a new Teams member is added, so that you can trigger this Power Automate and then, for example, display that new member a message with the rules, with the procedures, or simply you can display them, for example, as well adaptive cards with some points or with a form to help them on board to this team, to Microsoft Teams in general as well, or to you can as well display them an adaptive card with as well those rules, and that they need to sign off that they understood, that they read them, and so on. This way you can use the new trigger. And the second one is called for a selected message. How this second trigger works? Well, actually, if you create a Power Automate using this trigger and then you hover any kind of a message, whether in private communication or in channel communication, you'll see this ellipsis icon. Once you click it under More Actions, you will have a list of all the Power Automates that were created using this trigger. The really important thing here is that this label here has a name of a flow. So once you'll be doing those Power Automates, just be sure that you name them in a very descriptive way and that those names are not very long. Now, once I click it, I have an adaptive card designed here, my own adaptive card, that can be used for multiple purposes. What I'm doing here is simply, I'm giving the options to the user that they can just, let's say, report this message for different of reasons, or request to send them a copy. So now once this let's say adaptive card is sent, it is actually triggering a Power Automate. And let me show you how it works. Okay, so here you have this Power Automate. It has been triggered for the selected message. And now it went into switch that works differently based on what was the outcome from the form. Now, note one thing. The coolest thing about this trigger is not that you can create your own adaptive card and simply put it here to be displayed for this selected message, but the cool thing is that you already have this new adaptive cards designer built into Power Automate. So if you want to design this adaptive card, you simply have a designer inside the Power Automate environment, so you don't have to navigate away to the second tab, create the tab, copy JSON code and paste in here. You can simply open the designer, craft the card here, then save it, and it's done. You can use it right away. Okay, maybe just a preview. And then, as I said, on the switch, so for example, if this is a report message scenario, then what the Power Automate is doing is simply assigning another card, this time in the private communication, to the manager to wait for the response. Now, when speaking about adaptive cards in Microsoft Teams, we actually have a couple of choices. So the first two things, post your own adaptive card as a flow bot to a user or to a channel preview, are with us for over a year or something. But with them, you can actually post an adaptive card, but if this adaptive card contains a form and you would like to get a feedback from this form, if you'd like to get the response from this form to use it in Power Automate, then there was no way to do it. The only way it was working was once you were sending an adaptive card generated by the assign a task or the task approval task action in Power Automate. So the adaptive card generated by the approval task action in Power Automate was the only code that you were able to send here and get back the response. Any other was simply not working because the flow bot that is working under this technology was simply not configured or programmed to understand those custom responses. Now, starting this year, we were given two new actions that are called post an adaptive card to Teams channel or to Teams user and wait for the response. They work actually the same way as the task action. So they wait until 30 days for the response. And then once the response is received, they simply give you all the outcomes from all the fields that are inside the card, and then you can work with them. What is important in this action is that once you define a field, for example, the text field, and you want to get the data out of it, you need to define the ID. And the ID has to be unique because then the ID is being used as the name of one of the outcomes. This action is simply post an adaptive card to Microsoft Teams user and wait for the response. Now you can see that its layout is a bit different. It's the old one. So I have just a field to copy paste the JSON code of an adaptive card. It's not very useful. And then I have those options to decide whether I want to replace my original card with a new one and what should be the confirmation message. So this works. All right. Let me just jump back to Microsoft Teams and to the cards, to the communication. So right here, I already have this message sent by the Power Automate for the selected message. I see who requested it, what were the comments, and I also have the information about the message that was reported. And with that, I can go and open this message so that I will see with this yellow highlight what the user is talking about, and I can react. I can delete this message. I can prompt the author maybe to delete on their own. And then I can complete this task. Now you will see that this card is also going to be replaced with this information, with the hyperlink to the reported message and some other custom information I can use here. But unfortunately, I can't display here any kind of a data that, for example, could be provided by the user in the first place. And if I go back to my Power Automate, I can see that it is now completed because the waiting for the response from this card has been completed. Cool. All right, and now the last example I have. This is about the, again, Power Automate, and this time about invoicing approval. So in majority of the companies, when you have a new invoice that requires an approval, you actually upload it to some kind of a storage like SharePoint or as a file share, and then there is a workflow being triggered that assigns a task to the accountancy team, and then someone from the accountancy team needs to go into that resource, review it, then go back to the task, say it's approved or rejected, and then do something else. But what I mean is that they really have to navigate between the systems, and sometimes they're just losing the focus. What I want to show you is an example of the same solution, but totally put inside Microsoft Teams. So first, an employee is responsible for scanning the invoice. So let me show you how it works. They have to click this Analyze button, then upload an invoice that is now being analyzed by the AI builder and the forms processing AI. So because it was taught in the first place how to recognize this layout of the invoice, let me show you how it looks like. Where do I have it? So this is a model built on top of this layout of the invoices, so it's able to recognize the invoice number, the dates, the due dates, who is what is the company that the invoice has been issued for, the contact information, the total value, and also the table. So it is able to recognize all the items from the invoice. So now it has been analyzed. Once I turn on the fields recognition, I can see that actually the AI Builder was able to properly identify all the fields that it was thought to understand. Now, once I hit the send for approval, what is going to happen is a Power Automate going to be triggered that is going to generate an adaptive card sent to Microsoft Teams channel, let's say used by the accountancy team where they work, where they communicate, where they collaborate on the documents, and where they do all their work. So right from this channel conversation, they will be able to actually see what is an invoice, what are the items on the invoice, what is the value on the invoice, and then approve or reject without actual need to navigate anywhere. Okay. So that is now sent. Let me now navigate back to the Teams. And here it is, so fast. I have this new adaptive card sent. I have information, all the information actually, from this invoice that has been scanned and analyzed. I have as well all the items information. Okay, one information here is missing. That quantity for the third position hasn't been recognized properly. But, well, that's something that always happens. What I could do here is as well to add the button somewhere, for example, here under the picture, to let the accountant navigate to the actual source document so they can review and maybe compare those items. But that is not very much needed because all the information they possibly need to check this invoice is here. And right from here, they can simply say approve or not. And then approve. Now, once this is done, you will see that also this card is being replaced by the default one that actually doesn't look that cool. But what you also saw was that this adaptive card was actually waiting for my response, right? It was waiting until I provided the feedback, until I hit the reject or approve buttons, and then it moved on. So how was it done? Very well, I'll show you. The start was that once the invoice has been approved, once the invoice has been sent to the approval, this Power Automate is triggered. So it is triggered by the Power Apps button, let's say. And then it is given all the data from the Power Apps that it obtained from the AI Builder. So all the identified fields, all those information has been passed here as the variables, as the input variables. And then there is a try-catch pattern because we all don't like if the flow fails and we as users have no information back, no feedback. Why do we need to wait so long? So there is a try-catch. If anything goes wrong, it is being caught and the error message is being returned. But anyway, what happens next is the Power Automate is actually parsing this table, the items that are in the invoice, and then for each of the item, it is simply concatenating or building parts of the JSON of the adaptive card, the final adaptive card, and concatenating. That is a little bit, it required a lot of work to actually create this flow because you have to really do manually all the parsing or the concatenations and then actually building all these final adaptive cards code. So that is doable. As you see, it works, but it's a little bit time consuming. Now, next, I'm using one of those two new actions that arrived this year that I mentioned in the first scenario, or the second one, sorry, that says post adaptive cards to Microsoft Teams and wait for the response. So it was waiting. And then lastly, based on the outcome, it is sending confirmation on the rejection message. That is so cool. How did you like it? Do you like this way of working, of really doing the processes that you have everything in one place? I like it very much. All right. That's it for now. Now, you saw this example of the invoice approval, right? And you saw that I had to do quite a lot of work to create this Power Automate, to go through the items, to actually build this adaptive cart code, to put the values from the AI builder inside. But what if we could have a solution that is actually just a template, and we simply provide the data to fill in this template and then to display it right on? Well, in adaptive cards, there is a preview project, the vNext project called the Adaptive Cards Templating, and it is already working in small pieces. For example, you are able to post a template to Microsoft Teams with just plain text to be replaced, and then it is going to be actually merged, so the data with the text. But you can as well use Adaptive Cards Templating SDK in your own custom applications and really benefit a lot from that. What is templating? Well, actually, that is just another layer on top of adaptive cards. It is built from 3 pillars: the adaptive card templating language, service, and SDK. The language actually lets you to build your own templates, put the placeholders, use expressions to make this creation of adaptive cards even less time consuming, and to creation of those whole workflows even less time consuming. The service is something I'll show you. That's something that actually looks up the repository of the templates and tries to find the one that is perfectly matching the given data. And then the SDK, well, that's something for the developers, so I will not be focusing on that because I am not a developer. Okay, I'm talking about those templates, the placeholders, how it looks like. Well, imagine this simple adaptive card that shows a quote, the stock quote from Microsoft. It is defined, it is constructed, and all the values are hard-coded. That's true in Power Automate. You could replace them with outcomes from previous actions, so that would be like a quasi-dynamic. But what if you could simply replace these values with actually the placeholders and then provide a data as a separate JSON? So this is what the templating language is all about. You can replace the values in the adaptive cards code with the placeholders, and then you just provide a JSON, data in a JSON format, and these two things are being merged in the real time as a card is being generated into the same working scenario, the same working example. Now, what is the expressions? Because the language is not only those placeholders you can use, this is also the expressions. The expressions actually is a way that we can put even the higher layer of the templating into the code. So we can put we can use the loops, we can use the conditions, we can use formatting, we can use transformations. There is a lot of those expressions we can actually benefit from having inside the adaptive cards templating language. And putting this all together really helps us to do a lot of more in a less more time. So now imagine, or if you can simply move back to the example I showed you, here is the same adaptive card that you saw in the Microsoft Teams, but this time you can see that all the information here are replaced by those placeholders with adaptive cards templating expressions and language, right? For example, the table of items is just a single row. There is as well a label with its warning information. You can see that the warning has expression as well defined, that it should only be displayed if the value is above 5,000. Now, how it all works? Well, actually, at the top of the card, there is a data. There is a binding scope data. And in this data binding scope, there is information provided to be actually displayed, to be displayed, replacing all these all these placeholders. And one of them is the table data that contains all the information about the items that were on the invoice. Plus, if we look carefully into the code, we can as well find that one of the elements in the table, that is the total value, is going to be displayed with a different color based on the value of the specific row. Okay, so now, are you ready for some magic? I am. Once I hit the preview mode, you'll notice that the card is actually being replaced with the real data and looks just the same as the one as I showed you in Microsoft Teams. Cool. And the coolest thing is that because the table data, because the items data was a table, then the templating language automatically multiplies the row this number of times how many rows in that table are present. So with this functionality, with this technology working in adaptive cards in Teams, I would simply need to provide just the data in a JSON format. Well, speaking on site, what AI Builder is returning is just a JSON data. So I would be just ready ad hoc to actually display this data in my adaptive cards. And then I wouldn't need to spend a lot of time on creating my own loops and my own definitions around building and concatenating all these chunks to display the final adaptive card. That's really cool. Now that was the first thing. The second one is adaptive card service. Once you navigate to the developer Microsoft.com to the Graph Explorer, then you'll see that once you go into any kind of examples, besides today seeing the data returned in a JSON format, there is also this adaptive cards tab here. How it works? Once I hit it, you'll see that it is displaying a label saying fetching adaptive card. What it means? Well, simply it means that behind this button, behind this functionality, there is a LUIS, so the Language Understanding Intelligence Service, that is reviewing the GitHub repository of all the templates created by the community and the team itself for the one that matches the given JSON structure, the JSON format, the most accurately. And once it finds this matching template, it simply grabs it and then displays it, replacing the placeholders with values coming from the data. That is so cool. And one of the things that the team is as well working on is the adaptive card authoring service, which is a kind of application that you can actually install locally in your premises, and then you can collaborate on creation of the templates with the whole team. And there is also going to be a dedicated connector for Power Automate, so you'll be able simply to provide the data in JSON format, pick what template you want to use to display it, and this will just grab the template, merge it, and for example, prepare to be displayed in Microsoft Teams. And that is really awesome because with this authoring service, you'll be able to create the formats of adaptive cards for your own company with this controlled branding, with unified UI. And so they can be then used, for example, in Teams or Actionable Message or wherever else, and controlled from the single place. That's really, really cool. Okay. Let me now go back already to the final thoughts, sorry. Okay, so today we are working on version 1.2 as said. One of the coolest things that adaptive cards have been, let's say, supplemented over the years, the media support, so you can play videos, you can play music right from the card. There is a basic C4 image support. There are the inline actions so that you can put this action set anywhere inside the action. There is also some basic data validation already in place. Now, what is coming up with the new releases of adaptive cards? Well, as said, the templating service is going to, so the templating technology as a technology is going to come out from the preview into the public version, so we'll be able to use it, and then I hope that Microsoft Teams will implement this as well. We will have a lot more around the validation of the fields, advanced validation, for example, using regular expressions or patterns, so then you will be able to create even more advanced scenarios for forms and inputs from users. We will have hopefully a universal action that will be so that you'll use, instead of action submit, action get, action whatever we have today in adaptive cards, one action execute. So you'll be able to choose then if you want to just open URL, if you want to submit a card, if you want to use a toggle. And all these goodies are coming. And then possibly somewhere in the next years, we will have these card authoring services or author services that, as I mentioned, will let us to have this single place where the team can collaborate and create their own adaptive cards. If you're interested in what is upcoming, then just go to adaptive cards, ak.ms/AC roadmap, and you'll land here. So in this product board portal, where you can find information on what the team is working on with the previews, how it's going to work, how it's going to look like. You can see, review. You can as well submit your own idea if you have a really outstanding requirement. And then once it is reviewed and approved, it will be also displayed here. And you can as well review what is under consideration. So what are those features that the team is working on right now, or maybe is considering to start working or to put on the real roadmap and to deliver them one day to you as well. All right. So having that said, I think we reached the end of the presentation. I wanted to thank you very much for your attention, for watching this whole presentation around adaptive cards. I really hope it inspired you. It made you to think, hey, how can I use the adaptive cards in my own processes? Because I really believe that a lot of you is already working with Microsoft Teams, already is working with, I know, Cortana, for example, maybe bot framework, and you can actually really benefit from having adaptive cards as a technology for displaying content, for interaction with users, for interaction in processes, or around any other kind of activities you do have in your companies. So once again, thank you very much for watching. I wish you very, very engaging and very interesting next sessions over the next days. And if you want to contact with me, you have all the details in here. You can use emails, you can use my Twitter. I very much encourage you to follow me on Twitter and as well to subscribe to my channel in YouTube, where on the blog, I'm writing very in a detailed way on the solutions I'm building, but on YouTube, you can really watch how they work and how they will build step by step. So here you have all the information how to contact me. Once again, thank you very much, and see you at the next conferences, somewhere in person, hopefully. Bye.